So let's move on to my top 10 wide receivers of all time, greatest of all time in the NFL. This list, some of the players cover, multiple generations of players. And, I'm going to ask you guys each, what do you think about the selection and the position? And I want you to be as honest as you can about it and as detailed as you can. So the first person on my list of all-time greatest wide receivers, he is the GOAT, in my opinion, is Jerry Rice. One of the reasons I chose Jerry Rice as the number one wide receiver of all time, GOAT in the league. And there is a lot of wide receivers that have been in this league. I can go name after name after name that they've made such impacts on their teams. They've won Super Bowls. They've won most valuable players and the whole 9 yards. But Jerry Rice sticks out. And Jerry Rice, to me, is undisputable.
Yeah.
It's undisputable to me because Jerry Rice, when he went to Mississippi Valley State, he played in an offense which was a wide open offense called a satellite spread offense, where they didn't have a running back in even the backfield at certain times. They shotgunned the whole thing in college. His coach's name was Archie Gunslinger Cooley. He wore cowboy hat and cowboy boots to the games on the sidelines. And Jerry Rice, he just was all world at that point when he was at Mississippi Valley State.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his records that he broke at Mississippi Valley State and some of those records still haven't been even come close to being matched or broken at Mississippi Valley State. But when he was drafted in the league by the San Francisco 49ers in 1985, he lit the league on fire, technically, when he was drafted by the 49ers. Him and Joe Montana became, Batman and Robin, basically. The one variable that I kind of equated into this list as a collective is how good was the quarterback to make this receiver great. And if you look at Joe Montana and his style of play, and Joe Montana and, they had an offense that was designed strictly around Jerry Rice when he got drafted. So he had the overall career. Jerry Rice finished with an overall career of 22,895 yards. He played 14 seasons with 1,000 yards. That's, to me, almost unheard of. You have 14 years that you have over 1,000 yards and catches. He had 197 TDs, which, to me, another undisputable record as far as I can see it. It was just a no-brainer for me. He dominated every era, technically. What he did was, in the 80s, he dominated the 80s, and the 49ers became a dynasty, technically, in the 80s. A lot of it was due to Jerry Rice. It wasn't just only Jerry Rice, because they had a lot of good players on that San Francisco offense back then. They had John Taylor. They had a whole bunch of guys. Brent Jones, they playing tight end. They had Freddie Solomon even when Jerry got there. Freddie Solomon was kind of on the tail end of his career. Freddie Solomon used to play for Miami. He played for the Dolphins. And all I can say is I want to start with Najee first. What do you think about this pick? And do you think he belongs at number one?
Yeah, Jerry Rice. Yeah, he's not even close, bro. Just he's almost like the Wilt Chamberlain of records. So he's definitely the number one. He's definitely the number one. I ain't putting nobody over him.
Absolutely, because that Montana to Rice connection was special, man. And on top of that, when Montana finally got let go by the 49ers, Steve Young came in, and he just immediately, him and Jerry Rice just immediately gelled. So Jerry Rice technically played under 3 different quarterbacks in that San Francisco offense,
and still was dominating.
And he was still super productive. He was still able to parlay his talent to a level where, you know, he was able to by far be better than the talent that was around him. And his ability to catch and run and his route running, I never seen him take a big hit. I really haven't. I mean, throughout the whole time that I watched the 49ers play, he was so skilled at skinny posts, wide posts, where that safety was playing, because, you know, that safety is an enforcer back there. And if you cut that off too quick, that safety can react and come up and lay a blow on you that you wouldn't be able to probably recover from. Jerry Rice was able to run those routes, and San Francisco's offense was based on, you know, 15 yards and in, curls out, and then he would take it to the house, him and John Taylor. Isaiah, tell me, what do you think about Jerry Rice being placed at number 1 on this list?
No gripes at all. I think that's one of the best things you have done for a while. Nobody can't, nobody's above them. I mean, you talking about 3 quarterbacks, and the good thing about Jerry Rice's career is he had Roger Craig in the backfield. So
yes, he did.
Most folks was absolutely afraid of the San Francisco's team at that time, because if Roger Craig will open that thing up for Jerry Rice to run those balls like that, because Roger Craig will break one on you, or they'll throw him a pass out of the backfield because he was a great receiver as well. Now, with Jerry being, under 3 different quarterbacks, it was handed down to Steve Young. So Steve Young watched, these guys from the beginning, and then it was ultimately, once their career was over, he had 2 good quarterbacks that was throwing him the ball. 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks was throwing him the ball. So you mentioned things about how a quarterback makes a receiver. He had 2 Hall of Fame throwing him the ball. So that
exactly.
Was
you spot on. You hit that right on the nails.
Crazy.
Spot on. And, throughout his career, he was able to maintain his ability to be able to stay in shape. He maintained his speed. He maintained a lot of that, and he played under 10 different quarterbacks on different teams, because he didn't stay with the 49ers. He played for the Raiders for a while, so he had a quarterback. Rich Gannon threw him the ball at the Raiders. He actually played in that Super Bowl game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. Jerry Rice was playing for the Raiders, and Rich Gannon was the quarterback back then, So he was in a West Coast offense. West Coast offense was very unique in its own way, because Bill Walsh, who was the head coach, he believed that, run and pass, a lot of it had to do with how he gelled in certain plays to be able to give it to Roger Craig, or that type of thing, or Tom Rathman, because Tom Rathman played fullback for the 49ers as well. So they were able to balance that out. And a lot of it had to do with how well talented the receivers were to take a quick 10 yards and out, or 10, 15 yards and out, and then catch it and turn and go. I mean, and that was the big deal about, why I put Jerry Rice at the number 1 spot. So let's move on to the number 2 receiver, Randy Moss. Randy Moss was a long, lanky, talented receiver. He started out of high school. He definitely committed to Florida State, and there were some issues that kept him from going to Florida State, and he ended up at Marshall, which was a small school in West Virginia. And he set a precedent when he was in college, and then he got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. And Randy Moss, to me, he was special in the way that he just knew how to get deep. I mean, I didn't see Randy Moss take a lot of short passes and go and take it to the house. But what Randy Moss had the ability to do was to gauge how a defender was going to come up on him on the line, being a shutdown cornerback, and the safety And technically, with him and Dante Culpepper, that was the connection that I was able to place Randy Moss at number 2.
Yeah.
Dante Culpepper was a hell of a quarterback. He was a special quarterback at the time that he played in the league for the Minnesota Vikings. Technically, it was like they were at a schoolyard. You know, like when we used to play in elementary school, we go out to the field and we just look. We be in the huddle. The wide receiver say, "I'm going deep. Just throw it up." And that's kind of how Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper had that relationship. Chris Carter was on that team.
He would just do like this and throw me the ball.
he throw up that hand.
Yep,
And if he throw up that hand,
get it to him.
Dante Culpepper would throw it up to the highest point. And Randy Moss, it was like he was so good at those deep passes, he would not even stick his hands out until the ball was almost there. And you just see he'd stick his hands out, boom, the ball was tucked in. You know, so that made him special. Randy Moss gained 15,292 yards. He played 10 seasons with 1,000-yard seasons, and he had 156 TDs. He was the most physically dominant deep receiver to me that I've seen. Defenses changed because of Randy Moss. I remember D'Angelo Hall, who was an ex-Virginia Tech cornerback, or actually, D'Angelo Hall was a cornerback, and he played at Virginia Tech, but he got drafted by the Falcons, and I think they were in a preseason game, and Minnesota was in town to play Atlanta at the time, and they asked Hall about it, and Hall said, "Look, man, all I saw was his hand go up. I mean, he broke off the line. He was able to break free without getting chucked, bumped. That's what they call it in football. And he was really good at that too. When a shutdown defender would come up and try to bump him, he was able to juke him and get around and throw that hand up. So that's what made Randy Moss special. So, Isaiah, do you have any issues with Randy Moss being placed at number 2?
Not at all. I watched him play, and I think he's right there at the top. I have no issue at all.
How about you, Najee?
The only issue I have about that him and Tom Brady gave up that Super Bowl against the Giants. That's
true.
That's the only thing that pissed me off about your boy. Other than that, I am fine with him being number 2 all time.
Yeah, you know what was special about that is the Giants just had their number. The Giants had their number, but Randy Moss played with about 15 to 18 different quarterbacks over his career in the 14 years that he played. He played under Culpepper. He played under Brady. He was able to play under quite a few quarterbacks that were Hall of Fame quarterbacks, you know, just as Isaiah stated in the earlier one. So we'll move on to number 3. I got Terrell Owens at number 3. T.O., my guy. But I'm not just putting T.O. at number 3 because he's my guy. I'm putting T.O. at number 3 because T.O. earned number 3, in my opinion. T.O. went to a small school, unheard of almost school. I mean, University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. He was a low draft pick. I mean, he wasn't even expected to make it on the San Francisco 49ers squad. And he parlayed himself somewhat, like we explained about Ocho Cinco earlier, that the one catch that made him T.O. made him super famous and super, I mean, you know, all world and everything. But the physicality part about why I placed T.O. here is because T.O. was a big, strong receiver. He was in the best shape that I've ever seen a receiver in. You know, you see a lot of wide receivers, either they undersized or they exactly.
Yeah.
He was a hybrid to me as far as his size, and I saw him in person, so I could tell you firsthand. He was a really big receiver. He reminded me, him and David Boston and those type of receivers, they were big, super-sized receivers that could run. I mean, T.O. ran angry. He didn't run like he didn't run passively. Once he took and received the pass, the defender was going to have trouble getting him on the ground, period. I didn't care. I don't care which defender it was. It could be a shutdown corner. It could be a strong safety or a free safety. He was going to get through or around these defenders. So it looks like here, T.O. gained 15,934 yards over 9 seasons. He had 1,000 yards in 9 seasons. He had 153 TDs. And he was reliable. He was durable. He didn't get injured that much. I know he broke his ankle on a play where they tackled him around his legs and the guy rolled over on his ankle and broke his ankle because he played in the Super Bowl against the Patriots.
Against the Brady and
and they had to do surgery on his leg, and they put a cast on it and they taped it up and they shot him up to be able to play in that game.
Yeah,
but
that year I thought that was Vic's best year to make it to the Super Bowl, because I was like, they had to play the Eagles, but when T.O. didn't play, I said, oh, we got a shot. But then that was also the year I found out that tropical guys don't really play too well in the snow, because Vic couldn't do nothing that year against the Eagles.
Exactly.
And that was without T.O.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing with me is T.O. played with Steve Young. And like I said, that one catch that San Francisco was able to pull that game out against Green Bay was just fun. That put him on the map. That made him T.O. Everybody called him Terrell Owens before that. And, one thing I noticed about T.O. was very humble up until that point. And he's still humble because I think he's still a pretty decent guy in terms of being humble. But when he became T.O., it was just an alter ego that he inherited, that he wasn't Terrell Owens anymore, because I was remembered that when they were interviewing him, he said that when he first got to the 49ers, he ended up eating in Burger King. He would go to Burger King after practice. Nobody knew who he was. I mean, he'd go in there and order his food, sit down. But when he became T.O., he became all world. He became this, this Batman type of player. All because of Steve Young. He played with Steve Young. He played with Donovan McNabb. Donovan McNabb and T.O. to me was kind of a Batman and Robin, And Donovan McNabb was able to throw it up similar to what Dante Culpepper did with Randy Moss, as far as I was concerned. He was relentless.
Then I'll catch it for you.
Just throw it. I'll catch it. And then when I catch it, I'm going to run with it, and no defender is going to get me on the ground. The only defenders I knew was able to match tackling him was linebackers. And the linebacker had to be a decent-sized linebacker. You couldn't have an undersized linebacker coming up because he had a stiff arm that was just as deadly as Derrick Henry's stiff arm. He'd literally take his hand and he just push guys off of him, who was trying to come up and tackle him.
Blocker too, DC. During the run, and
you know what? You just took the words right out of my mouth, Isaiah. I was just getting ready to say that he was one of the best blocking receivers that I've seen in the league in the history of the league. On one particular play when Ezekiel Elliott broke for Dallas, because T.O. was playing for Dallas at the time, he was able to literally lead Ezekiel Elliott down the sideline without any defenders being able to get to him, because T.O. was able to block 2 defenders literally at one time, and he blocked that last defender to get him to the end zone. So to me, number 3, I couldn't deny him number 3. Do you guys have any issues with that?
No,
not at all.
Okay.
T.O. was one of my favorite receivers.
Absolutely. Mine too. Let's go to number 4. Let's go to Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald was another large, oversized receiver. To me, he could have played tight end because he was big enough to play tight end, but he had the speed of a receiver. And Larry Fitzgerald was special, man. And the reason I say Larry Fitzgerald was special, I remember when University of Pittsburgh came to the University of Miami, and that was during a time where you came into that Orange Bowl, you were going to get it handed to you, And Larry Fitzgerald was able to have a really solid game against that Miami defense that was literally number 1 in the nation at the time. And, his father was a coach. His father, Larry Fitzgerald Sr., was a coach at the Minnesota Vikings. So he grew up kind of like as a ball boy around receivers, you know, the older receivers that was at Minnesota at the time. And he came up during a time where he was able to build his skill set up. So when he went to the University of Pittsburgh, he parlayed that moving into the NFL for the Arizona Cardinals. He was tough to tackle, man. I'm just going to tell you, he had these big dreads coming out of the back of his helmet. His helmet looked too small for his head, to be honest with you. You get a guy that catch a ball like that, you're going to try to have to get him onto the ground. You just try to dive at his legs, at his ankles, because that's basically all you could do, because you weren't going to be able to slow him down, hitting him high. Hitting him up high, you weren't going to slow him down. So Larry Fitzgerald's total receiving yards was 17,492 yards. He had 9 seasons with 1,000 yards total, and he scored 121 TDs. Listen, he's just like T.O. I mean, they were durable. They were big, strong, durable, hard to tackle, and he could block. His blocking skills, to me, was excellent when it came to that, because I know he was able to spring a lot of Arizona's running backs to make big runs because of Larry Fitzgerald. Isaiah, do you have any issues with Larry Fitzgerald being at number 4?
No, not at all.
How about you, Najee?
Where's your sound?
I'm gonna say right now, Mike Irvin about to be somewhere on this list. I'm fine with him being
Rest
for him
assured.
being 4th. That's fine. Mike Irvin about to be somewhere near. Please.
Rest assured, you just made me feel comfortable about Michael Irvin. Playmaker. I call him Playmaker. So let's go to number 5. Let's go to Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison was a smaller, undersized type of receiver. He's about 5'10". I'm just going to throw the number 5'10", 5'11", 75 to 180 pounds. Straight, perfect, crisp route runner. I mean, he was always able to parlay himself into being able to run routes where he didn't take a big hit either. Marvin Harrison was special in a lot of ways because he had Peyton Manning, and it was the Manning to Harrison connection at the time. When Peyton Manning was looking for his receiver, he went to Marvin Harrison.
Yep.
Once Reggie Wayne got there, Reggie Wayne was able to take, and Reggie Wayne was the ex-University of Miami wide receiver who was lined up on the opposite end. They were bookends, and him and Marvin Harrison played together. And it's like Marvin Harrison, he came out of Syracuse, but he was a type of runner where he was so elusive, you weren't going to get a big shot on him, you know, technically, when he played. I watched the game against the Tennessee Titans that Marvin Harrison, he just had a breakout game, him and Peyton Manning. It was Manning to Harrison. So Marvin Harrison had 14,580 yards. He had 8 seasons with 1,000-yard seasons, and he ended up having 128 TDs. He ran his routes surgical, technically. He ran his routes so smooth and so crisp, the defender really didn't know where he was going, which direction he was going in, when he was going to stop and go. He would do they call them go routes in the NFL. I don't know if they call them go routes now, but technically a go route is when it's a bomb, you know,
Yeah.
and the receiver just, he releases off the line and he runs straight down the sideline and the quarterback throws it up. Marvin Harrison was one of the best in the business with running routes because, like I said, he never took a big blow coming to him from any play that I ever saw when he played for Indianapolis. You guys got any issues with Marvin Harrison being at number 5?
No.
Not at all, sir. Not at all.
All righty. Let's go to number 6. And I kind of had a little bit of, and I'll tell you once I name him off, Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson was an ex-Georgia Tech player. He set the world on fire at Georgia Tech. I used to live in Atlanta, so Georgia Tech was downtown in the Midtown area of Atlanta. I didn't see Georgia Tech play a lot, but with Calvin Johnson, he was another big receiver. He was another perfectly route runner in terms of him being able to run routes. He played for the Detroit Lions pretty much his entire career. And Calvin Johnson was special. The only thing, that kept Calvin Johnson from being up higher on this list was he cut his own career short by retiring, similar to what Barry Sanders did. He wanted his health. He wanted to preserve his health. So he decided to leave the game, instead of playing 10 years, 11 years, 12 years. But every time I saw Detroit play, especially on Thanksgiving with him playing, he set it on fire. I mean, he ran perfect routes. He played with Matthew Stafford for a long time when he played at Detroit. And it was Stafford to Johnson. And Johnson was the type of, wide receiver. He wasn't going to let you tackle him either. It looks like he had 11,619 yards. He played 7 seasons with 1,000 yards. He had 65 TDs. He was a team player. Everybody loved him on the team. He would help young rookies that came in. And it looks as though they call him Megatron because he was Megatron. He was the type of receiver. He went up and got the ball at the highest point, and he would always come down with it. But once again, he decided to retire. But he still went into the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer. So that's without a doubt. He holds the single season yardage record of 1,964 yards. So, I mean, he was a generational type of player for that as well. You guys got any problems with Calvin Johnson being placed at number 6?
Yeah.
No issues?
Yeah.
I do. I just
have
said,
issues.
yeah,
I have.
Okay, so break them down to me. First, break them down to me, Najee, and tell me how you got issue with Calvin Johnson.
Now, I will tell you, you did say that he ended his career short. So you mean to tell me he ended his own career short and still on top of Michael Irvin?
Well, and let me just be honest. Let me be perfectly honest with you. I had to contemplate, and I spent hours trying to justify putting Calvin Johnson up above Michael Irvin. I honestly did. But I just thought Calvin Johnson, what he did in the short period of time that he played, Michael Irvin was just as effective, but Calvin Johnson played 7 seasons and Michael Irvin pretty much played the same, but Michael Irvin had less yardage and stats. He had less TDs. So I kind of look when it came down to the two of them, they were both similar in size. They were both physical receivers, and they were both able to parlay their success into catching a ball and running with it after the fact, But that's the only thing that I kind of arrived at. That Calvin Johnson's numbers was a little bit more than Michael Irvin's numbers, and that's what kind of gave me the comfort to go ahead and put Calvin Johnson above him, because actually I had Michael Irvin above Calvin Johnson, and then I scrambled it back. So I'm just telling you, that's kind of how I arrived at that. So Isaiah, I want to hear your issue.
You organizing this thing, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm in totally agreement with Najee when it comes to Michael Irvin. But before I would have put Calvin Johnson in there, I would have snuck Lynn Swan in there. I don't know Lynn Swan's numbers because you're going straight off stats. You've been digging and clawing and finding all. I like to look at what I've seen, especially when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, I look at a good receiver with my own eyes. I'm not digging for all of them stats, man. That ain't telling you that they were the best.
I hear you. I hear you.
Is get a good quarterback, and then it'll marginalize the receiver. If you got a guy who's probably the best receiver, but his quarterback is not popping off. Or the position they got themselves in. Or you have a quarterback a coach who's more inclined to run the ball more than pass, like it was here when Marino in Miami. We had good running backs at the time, but we was throwing the ball up and down the field because Marino had Duper and Clayton, and you would throw the ball more so than run. But in this case, I don't think he should have been in front of Michael Irvin, and I think Lynn Swan should have been in there. But that's your list, and I'm
Okay.
gonna give you an F at the end, just off of that.
Okay.
You're getting an F.
With only one issue, you're gonna give me an F. Okay. All right. Okay. So here's another thing too, to just bring to you guys' attention. Here's one more thing. Michael Irvin played 12 years and Calvin Johnson played 9 years.
Oh, okay.
Calvin Johnson decided to leave the game. They have very similar numbers. Calvin Johnson had a total of 11,619 yards. Michael Irvin had 11,904 yards. That's kind of how I brought myself to bring Calvin Johnson into the fold. I could have brought a lot of other receivers. Like you say, I could have brought that generation from that Swan generation.
So you're trying to say his peak was higher. Okay, I give you that.
That's kind of like what I was saying.
This is still the reason why I look at it differently than you. Now, remember when Michael Irvin played, it was a duo between Michael Irvin. He had another good receiver on that other side now. Remember that?
He had to share the wealth. Yeah, he had to share the wealth, and still numbers was that too far off.
That's what I'm saying, Najee. You hit it. It's just like when Duper and Clayton, it was these two pairs that he threw the ball to. On Johnson's side, who was on the other side of him, DC? See,
I'm looking at that right now.
And that's the reason why.
Well, he had Roy Williams. I mean, now, don't get it twisted. He had Roy Williams. Roy Williams was an all-pro receiver. Roy Williams set all kind of records when he was lined up on the other side of Calvin Johnson. So, that balances that out a little bit. And I'm glad you brought that up because I just happened to pop this up. Yeah. And Roy Williams was a big play receiver. So a lot of players on defenses, they doubled Roy Williams a lot. And then sometimes they would double Calvin Johnson. So it kind of opened up either side, for either player, but that is a good point, Isaiah. I do appreciate you bringing that up, Okay. Let's move on.
Okay. Another question. No. One more question. Did either one of them win?
Win the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's without a doubt. Michael Irvin by far is a Super Bowl champion multiple times. Okay. Yeah. Calvin Johnson was on a team that never even got to the playoffs.
Okay, so then that's perfect. So make sure you got to include that too, because you could be on a garbage team and just get a whole bunch of garbage stats versus putting stats in and winning.
But on the flip side of that, just think if Calvin Johnson was on the Cowboys and Michael Irvin was on the Detroit Lions, which the Detroit Lions was a basement team for at least 10 years. They were a basement dwelling team in the NFC North for over 10 years. They didn't even get close to getting to the playoffs. So if you swap these players and you put Michael Irvin on Detroit, I mean, come on. I mean, Calvin Johnson would have been a Super Bowl champion if he would have been with the Cowboys.
Team is easy to get your stats. If you're on a garbage team,
that's true. But I'm just saying, on the flip side, if you swap these players,
if you relate this to basketball, look at Jordan numbers when he was getting his behind kick versus when he was winning. His numbers is by far, it's not even close. Like I think the most he ever averaged was 38. He ain't win no championship. He didn't start winning championships until it started to get closer into the 29, 30, 31, 32 era. But when he was averaging 38, 39, 37, he wasn't winning then.
Right.
So
I'm just saying
it's heightened. James Harden, when his best numbers, when he was with the Rockets, they wasn't going past the second round. When his numbers was little, when he was backing up Durant and them, his numbers was 15, 16, not no 34, 35. So you can't only go by numbers now. You just because
I'm not going by numbers. I'm once again.
But I'm telling you, it's easier to get it when you're on a garbage team because you're the focal point. You're the person that's got to get all the stats for yourself. If you
Well-
don't do it, nobody else will.
I'll give you another variable that I went, comparison to these two players. Calvin Johnson ended up playing with 6 to 8 different quarterbacks. Let me name some of the list of quarterbacks off.
No
He played with
celebration.
Matthew Stafford, which was all pro. So I'm going to eliminate Matthew Stafford from this list right now. He played with Drew Stanton, Sean Hill, Dan Orlovsky, who's currently on ESPN.
Okay.
Come on, man. Michael Irvin played with Troy Aikman forever and won Super Bowls with Troy Aikman. You can't compare the two because Calvin Johnson never did have the opportunity to have a Troy Aikman until he got Matthew Stafford.
Okay.
Am I right?
So you
Yeah.
mad because he was in a stable condition?
Nah, points taken, DC.
Huh?
Points taken, DC. Move to Michael Irvin.
Yes, sir.
Points
So
taken
let's go
even
to
though-
number 7. I'm happy to be at number 7.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be because I'm starting to dance
Sam
at number
points
7,
taken,
baby.
Listen, DC.
Michael Irving
Wait,
is
I'm
my
saying
number
points
7
taken.
pick.
Yeah, I said points taken, but that don't justify it now. Okay, don't get it all twisted up. Go to number 7.
That means we just understand your side of the ball. That's all.
Understanding that.
There you go.
You've reached the end of another episode of the DC Stewart Sports Talk Podcast. Be sure to connect with us at Facebook and Twitter.com. Your voice is important, so head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Catch our next episode.